Hello, this is Brother Kirkman, and I want to take just a few minutes to address a couple of things today that I think it's vitally important that Christians and preachers, especially pastors, understand today. One of these things is the relationship there is between our faith and our worship in America today, the relationship between that and our personal freedom, our liberty as Americans. Those two things are intricately connected. And in the second place, the role and the responsibility that pastors especially have in all of this. Alexis de Tocqueville was a Frenchman who toured America twice during the early 1800s, and he wrote a very, very famous book, a very important book, Democracy in America. It's a book that every Christian ought to read, every American for that matter, but pastors especially should be familiar with that book. De Tocqueville was a student and a great admirer of America, and he no doubt had a keener and a deeper understanding and appreciation for what made America great and what would keep America great than most Americans did in his day, and that most Americans probably have in our own day. One of his most familiar quotations is this. He said, "I sought for the greatness and genius of America in her commodious harbors and her ample rivers, and it wasn't there. In her fertile fields and her boundless forests, and it was not there. In her rich mines and her vast world commerce, and it was not there. In her democratic Congress and her matchless Constitution, but it was not there. Not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits aflame with righteousness did I understand the secret of her genius and power. America is great because America is good. If America ever ceases to be good," de Tocqueville went on to write, "she will cease to be great." Another one of his astute observations was this. He said, "Despotism can do without faith, but freedom cannot." There have been forces at work in our nation for many decades that have understood this very, very well. As legislators, they have undermined our freedoms to the point that our freedoms to speak, our freedoms to assemble, to bear arms, to own and manage our own personal property, all of these things so long taken for granted have now been put into question and whittled away, and now they're on the verge of being altogether lost irretrievably. Educators have done their part to propagandize at least two generations to the extent that young people have mindlessly adopted the ideologies that have enslaved, dehumanized, and murdered millions of people for over 100 years and are destroying, right now, they're destroying all symbolic reminders of people and events that are associated with America's legacy as a freedom-loving people. The leadership behind the Democratic Party, Antifa, and Black Lives Matter all understand this, as do the movers and shakers behind the mainstream media and the entertainment industry. They understand that despotism can do without faith, but freedom cannot. This is why time and time again, with more and more boldness, they've demonstrated their contempt for God and their obsession with the objective of suppressing truth and thereby suppressing individual freedom in America. In other words, bringing about the fundamental transformation of America depends upon removing God from the public square and weakening and weakening and weakening the Christian faith in this country. These people have no use for faith in God. That needs to be understood. And they view the very concept of faith in God as being obstructionist and counterproductive to their own objectives and agenda for America. Again, they believe strongly that despotism can do without faith, but freedom cannot. It'd be a blessing if pastors and the entire Christian community understood this as well as they do, and believed it as strongly as they do. Christians need to become more serious than ever before about being seekers of and adherents to the truth, and about growing strong in the faith. And I mean growing strong in the faith according to the admonition that we have individually in Jude verse 20, which says, building yourselves up in your most holy faith. And pastors need to be more earnest and energetic than they've ever been before about congregations building themselves up in their most holy faith. Too many Americans, Christian and non-Christian, declare by word and by action that they think that they can do without faith and still remain a free people. But this is impossible. And this is where America's preachers of the gospel come in. They must, you and I must, as preachers and pastors, during the times of the American Revolution did, we need to understand, as they did, that their duty relative to the Great Commission is inseparably connected with their civic duty. Years ago, I heard somebody say, and it impressed me so much, I wrote it down in the flyleaf of my Bible, which I still have that Bible with this written in it. The first most important thing we have to do as Christians is bring people to the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the first most important thing that we have to do. The second most important thing that we have to do is to preserve the freedom that we have to do the first most important thing. I think that's so true. I think understanding this would go a long way in helping preachers and others figure it out, recognize the legitimate place that political concern and involvement has in their ministry for Christ. I want to close this with these words from the Lord Jesus Christ, recorded in John 8:32. Jesus said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free."